Come here. Come here, little Timmy. Let me tell you something. Hello, friend. What I'm about to tell you is top secret. There's a powerful group of people out there that are secretly running the collectibles trade with an iron fist. I'm talking about the guys no one knows about. The guys who are invincible. The top 1% of the top 1%. The guys that play God without permission. This is the video they don't want you to see. Now, in all honesty, why did I start the video paraphrasing a quote from the excellent television show Mr. Robot that debuted in 2015, which, by the way, if you watch that show, don't let the name fool you. It's a very dark, deep, and disturbing show. It lasted 4 seasons. It's one of my favorite television shows of all time. If you live in the US, I believe you can still stream it on Amazon Prime. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while, but I've watched that show literally from first season to the last season, like 4 times now. I really love that television show. Well, the reason why we're going down the rabbit hole, the reason why we're talking about conspiracy theories today is because we have to address the internet's current favorite conspiracy theory affecting our favorite card grading company, PSA. Now, all you got to do is just go to the YouTube search bar, type in PSA scandal, and you're going to get a plethora of videos on this talking point. And the talking point that we are addressing today is the internet's favorite conspiracy-laden question. Is PSA buying up PSA 9 condition cards through their buyback program, regrading them as PSA 10's, and then reselling them again on the secondary market? Unfortunately, for a lot of the conspiracy theorists out there, the short answer is no. The long answer, the more complex answer that I'm going to give you in this video is absolutely no. But PSA does have a quality control and a PR problem at present time as a result of this issue. Now, I want to be very clear here. I have often said that the grading companies and the auction companies have way too much control in these markets. I've been literally beating on this desk since day one, telling you all that there should be more government intervention in these markets. Case in point, I don't know if you guys are aware of this. I'm sure you all know who Golden Auctions is. Golden Auctions is currently owned and controlled by eBay. Well, way back when, a couple of years ago, believe it or not, they were owned by Collectors. Collectors is the parent company of PSA. Now, I don't know about you. I don't think it's kosher for a grading conglomerate to also own an auction company, especially if that auction company auctions off the items that they're also grading. To me, that's a big no-no. I'll give you another big no-no. A couple of weeks back, it was announced that PSA's parent company, Collectors, is going to attempt to acquire Beckett. Now, of course, if they acquire Beckett, PSA and their parent company are going to control 80% of the trading card grading market. In my opinion, that reeks of a monopoly. The FTC, the government, needs to get involved and stop that acquisition, or at the very least, because again, I'm not a lawyer, at the very least, investigate the potential consequences of that acquisition. So you can see, I'm really not a fan of the amount of power that some of these companies that we talk about on a daily basis, whether it's Heritage Auctions, whether it's Collectors, PSA, whether it's CGC, whatever company it is, I'm here to tell you that a lot of these companies literally have way too much control in the market by and large. But that doesn't mean that everything's a scam. That doesn't mean that everything's a conspiracy theory. And that's why, to do this video justice, before we talk about this scenario that ensnarled PSA, that caught them in a PR issue that they're still trying to dig their way out of, we have to talk about third-party grading in general. And whenever we talk about third-party grading in general, there's a couple of facts you got to be aware of. First, third-party grading is more of an art than that of a science. This is why if you go on any collecting forum, there's even YouTube videos about this. There's social media influencers that put out statements like this. Well, you know, I think third-party grading is a scam because I sent my trading card, action figure, comic book, rare coin, video game to a grading company and it came back 9.4. I cracked it open. I resent it back to the grading company. And now it either came back, you hear stories like this all the time. Well, it came back a 9.2, or now my comic book's a 9.6. That means third-party grading is a scam because they can't get it right. Third-party grading is more of an art than that of a science. Every single third-party grading company, no matter how credible, no matter how much power they have in the trade at present time, they've all made mistakes from time to time. If we get in my DeLorean time machine and we go back to the mid-1980s with the advent of coin grading, two of the most prominent coin grading companies that are still in business today came out of the 1980s. Do you know who they are? PCGS, which ironically is owned by Collectors, which is PSA's parent company, and the other is NGC, which is affiliated with CGC. Now, interestingly enough, both of those companies have already made mistakes when it comes to grading coins. There also were already counterfeit coins that somehow got graded and placed in some of those companies' holders. This happened many years ago. What matters most, however, when something like that occurs, it's how they choose to acknowledge the mistake and correct it going forward. Now, obviously, if you invest like me, thousands of dollars in rare coins, I would tell you, just like I do myself, you must learn to trust PCGS, NGC, and also, of course, now we have CAC that is in the third-party grading game as well when it comes to coins. So all those companies are very trustworthy. Now, another thing when we talk about third-party grading, this is something that always upsets the Timmys, Kimmys, and Poindexters who don't understand how the antiques and collectibles trade works from a collectible finance perspective. Every time third-party grading comes into their favorite collecting market, they see prices rise, and that really ticks off just the average collector and enthusiast. And I get it. Even though I'm an evil investor, I can acknowledge your pain. I can empathize with you because you're just going after this stuff because you really love it and you want to own it. And here comes the evil investors, the evil third-party grading companies, the evil auction companies that are now really promoting this hobby. And as a result, prices are rising at all-time high price levels. I understand where you're coming from. But unfortunately, third-party grading is not going anywhere. It's a necessary evil in the trade, kind of like the Fed. And I can tell you firsthand, the trade was a lot worse back in the dark days before third-party grading was a thing. Back then, you would have to take a dealer's word for it. And I can tell you firsthand, when third-party grading started going nuts, first with coins, then with comic books, then we got the currency trading cards, now we're at toys, video games, and the like. In those dark days, there were people that took the word of the dealer, and they paid a small fortune for some of these items. Then when third-party grading became available, they sent those items to the grading company, and the grading company looked at them and said, wait a minute, you're telling us that you bought this comic book, that you paid the near mint price for this comic book from this dealer over here. Well, we're going to grade this, and we noticed there's some undisclosed restoration that dealer didn't tell you about. So third-party grading really actually helped the little guy. I just think it went too far to the extreme, where now you have people that are looking at a comic book, and all is what they're doing is they're going, well, this one says, the holder says 9.6, this one says 9.8, therefore this 9.8 should sell for 10 times the cost of that 9.6. Or if you cracked both those comic books out of the holder, you put the 9.6 over here and the 9.8 over here, and you told the person that was ready to buy that particular comic book, that 9.8, for 10 times the cost of the 9.6, to list all the defects, list how the 9.6 is different from the 9.8, there's probably a 99% chance that the person wouldn't even be able to do it. So that's where I think that third-party grading has gotten too far. We've gone too far on one extreme than the other. And when we look at these markets, it is a spectrum, and it's a spectrum that you have to respect and you have to understand how it operates. Now that I said all that, let's talk about this situation. So in case you're unaware, and again, if you go and watch the plethora of videos that were already made on this, it's actually hard to now decipher the facts of what happened in this case. There's a lot of speculation as to what transpired with this submitter, with PSA, how this went down. So I'm going to do my best to reconstruct this story now that I've heard it about 15 different times through multiple YouTube videos out there on the internet. So it would appear that a submitter went to PSA. He had 31 modern era Pokemon cards to get graded. Now, if you know anything about modern era Pokemon cards, if you're careful with opening those Pokemon cards, they're pack fresh, they're case fresh, you're wearing gloves, you're putting them in a sleeve, you're sending them right to the third-party grading company. The minute that you open them, that you sleeve them, 20% of those cards at a minimum should come back in PSA 10 condition. And some out there in Pokemon land will say that that's a very low number. In all actuality, it should probably be higher. My estimate is at least 20% of those 31 cards should have came back in PSA 10 condition, barring any type of unfortunate disaster, whether they got damaged in mailing, whether they got lost in the mail and then rerouted and the box was crushed. Assuming that didn't happen, some of these cards should have been in PSA 10 condition when he got the grades back. So lo and behold, this submitter sends 31 of these cards to PSA. They get graded. He checks the grades when he gets the notification that the grades are available. And he notices that all 31 cards were graded in PSA 9 condition. Now, if this was me, this is where I would take a step back. I would email PSA directly. And I would say, hey, I think we may have a problem here. I submitted 31 modern era Pokemon cards, and they all came back in PSA 9 condition. There were no PSA 10s here. Could you please take a look at these cards, have somebody just re-examine the submission, or at the very least, send me the grader's notes so I know why they did not grade any of them a PSA 10. Now, I don't know if this submitter did that. What I do know, what he did next kind of boggles my mind. Supposedly, as the story goes, and again, this is verified, I don't mean to throw shade at this particular individual. It's just the internet already made up its mind over this story. There's like a million different accounts of how this played out. Well, supposedly, this submitter then decided to use the PSA buyback program. So he knew all 31 of these cards were graded PSA 9. He agreed to sell them back to the company and get paid for those cards as they are. Now, interestingly enough, and this is where the facts get a little bit murky. Again, I don't know if he sent them an email. I don't know if a senior grader flagged the submission, but it looks like in that interim, they re-examined the cards, realized that some of them were graded too harshly, and some of the grades changed from PSA 9 to PSA 10 condition. Now, the important part of this story is that he already agreed to sell the cards back to PSA through their PSA buyback program. So you can see why this is the current internet's favorite conspiracy theory at present time. Now, interestingly enough, news of this story broke. It spread through wildfire, through YouTube, through social media, and of course, Nat Turner, who is the CEO of Collectors, PSA's parent company. He personally examined the situation and he responded on social media. And I hate to say this for all of you critics out there, his response makes sense. What he stated is there are two different systems. You have the grading system over here, and then you have the PSA buyback system over here. And these systems, these departments, they don't talk to one another. So now when we look at it through the lens of this is a major corporation that probably makes a lot of bad business decisions, makes a lot of mistakes, but they also make a ton of money because they get millions of submissions per month. This kind of makes sense how this played out. So the grading team and the senior grader that was reviewing this submission, they didn't know the cards were being bought back. So this is why when they went through the submission, the grades changed after the fact. Well, of course, the internet, being as crazy as it is, it all looked at this situation and said, well, this is a scam. PSA is a scam. They're profiting by buying off PSA 9 cards regrading them as PSA 10's through their buyback program, and then selling them back on the secondary market. Well, here's the problem, and this is why this conspiracy theory falls apart. The PSA buyback program works via a network of dealers. PSA does not buy the cards themselves, guys. This is a major misconception. Now, to be fair, I'm with you 100%. If you want to have a debate with me where you say, well, Sean, should a third-party grading company be allowed to even be involved in creating a network of dealers that buys back the items that they directly grade? I am more than welcome to have a conversation on that. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to agree with you more than you think if you tell me that that is an ethical gray line. It's a gray area where there is possibly some room for an unethical violation to occur. I will agree with you in that regard. But the problem is, again, the PSA buyback program works via a network of dealers. PSA is not directly buying back the cards themselves. Another thing we have to ask here is, again, with PSA grading millions of cards a month, they literally have a license to print money. If the acquisition of Beckett is allowed to go through, they're going to control 80% of the trading card market going forward. Their dominance is not going to lessen. It's going to increase. As a result, with being able to generate all that money on a monthly basis, why would PSA risk their reputation? Over 31 modern era Pokemon cards that were graded PSA 9, some were regraded, I should say, to PSA 10. Why would they risk their reputation over that small amount of money that they would make by buying back those cards and reselling them on the secondary market? Now, I know what my critics are going to say, because this has been mentioned in every single video that I watched already. Well, if they're doing this just 1,000 times per month out of all the submissions that they're getting, they're making tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars off this alone every single month. The problem is, guys, we would hear more stories like this on a regular basis. This wouldn't just be a one-off that happened on some boring Tuesday that the internet pretty much created this massive conspiracy theory out of, where the CEO of the company had to respond to. This isn't happening on a regular basis. This is one individual account of what transpired here. And I want to be very clear. I do believe the submitter that this occurred, because if you've ever worked for a multi-billion-dollar company, wink, wink, and you ever worked in sales or customer service, you know there are departments in that company that unfortunately do not communicate with one another. As a result, that can create a very negative customer service experience. So this is where I'm going to tell you, PSA has a problem on their hands, but not due to fraud, not due to ethics. It's actually due to quality control and PR management. So in all honesty, when I look at PSA, when I look at how much growth they've experienced over the last few years, I think it's ridiculous that they're trying to get in other markets. I think it's ridiculous that they're expanding their business vertically to include services like the PSA Vault. I honestly think they need to perfect their grading process and procedures first before they get involved in any of these other side businesses, side industries. Because in all honesty, I would really rather have a grading company that's gunning it. They're on point. They know what they're doing. They're growing at a good clip, and they're also the market leader. If they can perfect that process before getting involved in any of these other side businesses, whether it's the PSA buyback program, the PSA Vault, don't even get me started on the GameStop Power Packs program, because that could be an ethical violation in my opinion. If they would actually perfect their craft in grading first, that would be an excellent starting point. And you want to know what? This disaster would have never occurred in the first place. So I just want to give my opinion here, because there's a lot of crazy people on both sides. There's people out there that are claiming all third-party grading is a scam. Auction companies are a scam. PSA is a scam. Anything that happens in these markets, it's all a scam because it's unregulated. Then you have people on the other end, like Geoff Wilson, who, I hate to say this, the guy's good. I like the guy. I listen to him a lot, but he sometimes thinks, in my opinion, that PSA can do no wrong. PSA is daddy. PSA is God. They control everything, and everything they touch turns to gold. So I disagree with both those talking points. I really think the answer is somewhere in the middle. But looking at all the facts in this case, I'm sorry to say, this is just a PR issue / quality control issue. And I honestly think that PSA, going forward, they're going to have to change their system where if the grades are not finalized, meaning a senior grader didn't review those submissions, those grades, you should not be able to sell the cards back through another system, through PSA's buyback program. That needs to be changed. So hopefully Nat Turner will take all this criticism to heart and realize, hey, we got a major PR issue going on right here that is kind of getting out of hand. Because I'm going to tell you guys, all you got to do is go to YouTube, type in PSA scandal. You're going to get the plethora of videos on this. It is very sad. Now, all that being said, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And always remember this, guys. The world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do nothing. Thank you for watching, and if you are subscribed to this channel, I will see you in another upcoming video.